Did you know that to film this movie, the director used a special camera lens originally created by NASA for taking pictures in the dark of space? This one-of-a-kind lens allowed Stanley Kubrick to film entire scenes using only the light from candles, just like they would have had in the 18th century. Picture a world that doesn't look like a movie, but like a beautiful old painting come to life, where every face is lit by a soft, flickering glow. This film is a quiet, breathtaking journey through time, following a man who rises to the top only to discover it was all for nothing. Let's dive in and discover 20 weird and amazing facts about Barry Lyndon. Number 20. A book with a sad new ending. The movie is based on a famous novel called The Luck of Barry Lyndon, but Stanley Kubrick changed the story in a big way. In the original book, Barry Lyndon is a charming trickster, and the story has a more hopeful, almost funny tone. Kubrick read the book and loved it, but he decided to remove all the luck and charm. He wanted to make a film about fate and how a person's life can be controlled by forces they can't see. He turned a clever adventure story into a deep, sad tragedy. The Barry Lyndon in the film isn't lucky. He's a victim of his own ambition and the cold, uncaring world he lives in. What looked like a classic novel became a personal tragedy on screen. Number 19. 2 years to create a painting. Filming Barry Lyndon took an incredible amount of time. While most movies might film for a few months, Stanley Kubrick spent almost 300 days shooting this film. That's nearly 2 full years. He was a famous perfectionist, and he wanted every single shot to be perfect. He would sometimes ask his actors to do a scene over 100 times until it was exactly right. The crew had to be incredibly patient, and the actors had to be ready to perform the same tiny moment again and again. This long, slow process is why the film feels so calm and so beautiful. Every frame looks like it was painted with the utmost care. What looked like a simple story took a lifetime of patience to film. Number 18. The Real-Life Aristocrat. The beautiful Lady Lyndon was played by Marissa Berenson, and she was perfect for the role because she was almost a real-life aristocrat. She came from a famous and wealthy family, and she was one of the top models in the world before she became an actress. She had the grace, the posture, and the sad, distant look of a noblewoman from the past. Kubrick chose her not just because she was a good actress, but because she was Lady Lyndon. She understood the world of high society, the boredom, and the quiet sadness that came with it. She wears those incredible gowns and walks through those grand halls. It doesn't feel like acting. That wasn't just a costume. It was a return to her own world. Number 17. The actor who gave up everything for the film. The actor who played Lord Bullingdon, Barry Lyndon's angry stepson, was a young man named Leon Vitali. His performance was so powerful and full of hate that it's unforgettable. But here's the truly weird part. After the movie was finished, Leon Vitali gave up his acting career to become Stanley Kubrick's personal assistant. He worked for Kubrick for the next 30 years on every single film the director made until Kubrick died. He dedicated his entire life to helping the man who directed him. He was more than an assistant. He was Kubrick's closest friend and partner. What looked like a great acting role was actually the beginning of a lifetime of devotion. Number 16. The duel that was a masterpiece of nerves. The final duel between Barry and his stepson, Lord Bullingdon, is one of the most tense scenes ever filmed. It's long, quiet, and incredibly realistic. To make it perfect, Kubrick hired a famous duel expert to teach the actors exactly how to stand, how to walk, and how to fire their guns. The whole sequence was filmed with extreme precision, and the actors had to practice for weeks. The most famous part is when Lord Bullingdon has to fire his gun. His hand is shaking so much, and the camera holds on his terrified face. The actor wasn't just acting scared, he was exhausted from doing the scene over and over, and his fear was completely real. What looked like controlled acting was actually a real-life breakdown captured on film. Number 15. The Trouble with Ireland. The film was supposed to be filmed entirely in Ireland because that's where the story begins. But during filming, the Irish Republican Army, or IRA, became very active. There were bombings and threats, and the production was seen as a target. The IRA was angry that a film about the British Army was being made on their land. After receiving direct threats, Stanley Kubrick had to make a difficult decision. He packed up the entire crew, all the costumes, and all the equipment, and moved the production to England. They had to rebuild the Irish landscapes and farms on English soil. What looked like the Irish countryside was actually a clever movie set in a different country. That wasn't just a location change. It was a move made out of real fear. Number 14. The music that wasn't made for the movie. If you listen to the soundtrack of Barry Lyndon, you'll notice that the music is breathtakingly beautiful. But here's the secret. Almost none of it was written for the film. Stanley Kubrick didn't hire a composer to create a new score. Instead, he spent months listening to classical music from the 18th and 19th centuries. He hand-picked pieces by composers like Handel, Bach, and Schubert. The most famous piece in the film, the main theme, is a sarabande by Handel. Kubrick believed that original music could sometimes feel fake. By using real music from the time period, he made the film feel even more authentic. What sounded like a perfect movie score was actually a director's personal playlist. Number 13. 3,000 outfits. The costumes in Barry. Lyndon are so detailed and beautiful that they look like they belong in a museum. That's because the costume designer Milena Canonero and her team created an unbelievable 3,000 individual outfits for the film. Every single soldier, every background person at a party, and every child on the street had a historically accurate costume. The main characters had dozens of outfits each, made from real silk and lace. The actors had to be taught how to move in these heavy clothes, how to bow, and how to sit properly. The attention to detail was so extreme that it took over a year just to make all the clothes. What looked like beautiful costumes was actually a massive historical fashion show. Number 12. The narrator who knows everything. The film has a narrator who speaks in a very calm, dry voice, telling us what is going to happen to Barry before it happens. This narrator is a key part of the film's style. He makes us feel that Barry's fate is already sealed, and that we are just watching his sad story unfold. The voice belongs to a famous British actor named Michael Hordern. Kubrick chose him because his voice sounded like it was coming from the 18th century itself. The narrator doesn't have emotion, he just states facts, which makes the story even more tragic. We know Barry is going to fall, and we can't do anything to stop it. What sounded like a simple voiceover was actually the voice of fate itself. Number 11. The director who hated traveling. Stanley Kubrick was famous for being a homebody. After moving to England in the early 1960s, he almost never left. So for a film that takes place all over Europe, in Ireland, England, and Germany, Kubrick had to bring the world to him. He filmed everything in England and used incredible movie magic to make it look like different countries. He and his team studied thousands of old paintings and photographs to recreate the exact look of a German battle or an English country estate. He created the whole world of the 18th century without ever leaving his home country. What looked like a global adventure was filmed in a very small area. That wasn't just filmmaking. It was building a world in a backyard. Number 10. The actor with a glass eye. One of the most memorable characters in the film is the Chevalier de Balibari, a charming gambler and trickster. He was played by an actor named Patrick Magee, who had one very unique feature. He had a glass eye. Kubrick loved this detail and used it in the film. In several scenes, the Chevalier's glass eye has a strange, glassy, unmoving stare that makes him look both wise and a little bit scary. Magee was a favorite actor of Kubrick's, having also played the writer in A Clockwork Orange. Kubrick loved his intense, powerful voice and his unique presence. The glass eye was just an extra gift that made the character even more unforgettable. What looked like a perfect character detail was a real part of the actor. Number 9. The Rock. Throwing scene. Took a week. There is a small but important scene where a young Barry Lyndon gets into a fight with his cousin. He throws a rock at him, and the camera follows the rock as it flies through the air. It seems like a simple shot, but Stanley Kubrick, being a perfectionist, made the actors throw that rock for an entire week. They must have done it hundreds of times. He wanted the speed, the height, and the movement to be exactly right. The young actor who played Barry must have been exhausted by the end of it. This one tiny moment, which lasts only a few seconds on screen, represents Kubrick's entire approach to filmmaking. No detail is too small to perfect. What looked like a quick, easy shot was a week of hard, repetitive work. 8. The film that was a flop today. Barry Lyndon is considered one of the most beautiful films ever made. But when it was first released in 1975, it was a commercial failure. Critics and audiences didn't know what to make of it. They found it too slow, too long, and too sad. At a time when movies like Jaws and Star Wars were exciting and fast-paced, Barry Lyndon felt like a beautiful, boring painting. It was only years later, when people could watch it on video and appreciate its incredible craft, that it was recognized as the masterpiece it is. It was a film made ahead of its time, a quiet work of art in a loud world. What looked like a failure was actually a masterpiece waiting to be discovered. Number 7. The director's secret photo collection. To make the film look so real, Stanley Kubrick did an enormous amount of research. He and his team collected thousands of paintings and photographs from the 18th century. They didn't just look at them for fun, they studied them like textbooks. They looked at how people stood, how the light hit a face from a window, and what the dust looked like on a road. Kubrick would show these photos to his cinematographer and say, "I want the lighting to look exactly like this." He wasn't trying to make a movie that looked like the 18th century. He was trying to make a movie that was the 18th century. What looked like movie magic was actually a deep historical study. Number 6. The one step at a time rule. Kubrick had a very specific direction for his actors, especially Ryan O'Neal, who played Barry. He told him to move one step at a time. This meant that in every scene, Barry should not make any sudden or fast movements. He should walk slowly, sit down slowly, and even turn his head slowly. This gives the character a very deliberate, almost robotic feeling. It makes him seem like a man who is being controlled by fate, not by his own free will. Every movement is careful and planned, just like his rise in society. This simple rule created one of the most unique and memorable characters in film history. What looked like stiff acting was actually a brilliant director's rule. Number 5. The card games. Were real many important scenes in the film take place around a card table where Barry Lyndon wins his fortune. To make these scenes feel authentic, Kubrick hired professional card consultants to teach the actors how to play the games of the time, like piquet and faro. The actors learned how to shuffle, deal, and hold their cards just like they would have in the 18th century. The tension in these scenes is incredible, and it feels real because the actors are actually playing the games. They aren't just pretending, they know the rules, and they understand the stakes. The close-ups on the cards and the hands are not just for show, they are part of a real game being played. What looked like acting was actually a high-stakes card game. Number 4. The child actor who couldn't stop crying. There is a very sad scene where Barry's young son, Brian, has an accident. The boy is playing with a horse when he falls and is fatally injured. The scene is heartbreaking, and the young actor's crying is so real and so painful to watch. This is because the director, Stanley Kubrick, used a very clever trick. Before the scene, he told the young actor a story about his own pet dog that had died. He made the story very sad and personal, and the boy started to cry for real. Kubrick then immediately yelled, "Action!" and captured the child's genuine grief on camera. It was a tough method, but it created one of the most emotional moments in the film. That wasn't just acting. It was real tears for a camera. Number 3. The star who wasn't the first choice. Ryan O'Neal was a huge movie star in the 1970s, known for films like Love Story. He was handsome and famous, but he wasn't Stanley Kubrick's first choice to play Barry Lyndon. Kubrick had considered many other actors, including Jack Nicholson and Albert Finney. He eventually chose O'Neal because he had the look of an 18th century hero with his blonde hair and strong face. However, Kubrick was a very demanding director, and O'Neal found the long, slow process of making the film to be very difficult. Their relationship was often tense. But despite the challenges, O'Neal delivered a performance that is now considered perfect for the role, a beautiful but empty man, carried along by events. What looked like perfect casting was actually a difficult partnership. Number 2, the natural light. That was a huge problem. Kubrick's dream was to film only with natural light, using sunlight and candles. This created the film's famous soft, painterly look, but it was a nightmare for the crew. Because they couldn't use bright movie lights, they had to wait for the perfect time of day to shoot a scene. If a cloud covered the sun, they had to stop filming and wait for it to pass. For the candlelit scenes, the room had to be completely dark except for the candles, which made it very hard for the actors to see where they were going. The cinematographer had to use special super-fast film that was very grainy. It was a constant battle against nature, but the result was a look that has never been copied. What looked like beautiful, soft light was actually a daily struggle against the elements. Number 1, the NASA lens that changed cinema. This is the most famous fact about the film. Kubrick wanted to film scenes lit only by candles, but no camera lens was sensitive enough to capture that little light. So his team did something incredible. They heard that NASA had developed a special giant lens for taking photos of the dark side of the moon. It was a Zeiss lens with an f-stop of 0.7, which made it the fastest lens ever made. Kubrick's team managed to get 3 of these lenses and adapted one to work on a movie camera. This allowed them to film faces in a room lit by only a few candles, something that had been impossible before. This piece of space technology created the film's unforgettable, dreamlike look. That wasn't just a camera lens. It was a piece of rocket science that created art. Bonus fact. Here is a hidden story about the film's opening. The very first scene shows Barry's father in a duel. He is shot and falls to the ground. The camera then stays on his body for a very long time, as the narrator tells us he is dead. What most people don't know is that Stanley Kubrick filmed this scene last after the entire movie was finished. He did this because he wanted the actor who played Barry's father to have the same feeling of sadness and finality that the audience would have. The actor had just spent 2 years on the film, and his journey was over. Kubrick put him in that field and filmed his death as the very last piece of the puzzle. It was his way of saying goodbye to the story and to the character. One small choice changed movie history. Barry Lyndon is more than just a beautiful movie. It's a deep meditation on life, luck, and ambition. It shows us that a life filled with wealth and success can still be empty and sad. The film is a reminder that the journey is often more important than the destination, and that fate can be a cruel and unpredictable force. Stanley Kubrick didn't just make a movie about the past. He created a timeless painting about the human condition, a story that feels as true today as it did in the 18th century. It's a quiet masterpiece that asks us to slow down and truly look. If you enjoyed these stories, subscribe for more. Every movie hides a truth, and we'll keep uncovering them, one story at a time.